Entertainment in the Middle Ages. What was it like? What did people do for fun? I mean, it seems like there was always some war going on, or maybe there was a disease right around the corner ready to wipe out half of the European population, or there was a curse, a witch decided she wanted to launch a curse and see everybody die. There's a reason they call it the Dark Ages. I mean, the Middle Ages were pretty dark. But it wasn't all that bad. I mean, amongst all the chaos, amongst all the war and disease, people still had fun and people still kept themselves entertained. Much more so than you'd think. You'd actually be pretty surprised. So let's take a look at medieval entertainment and see what these people did for fun. Welcome to Vlogs of Knowledge. Now, to really understand medieval society, or any other historical era for that matter, we have to get a little historical context. We have to learn that every single historical period depends and builds upon the one that came before it. Now, the Middle Ages, they were a period that lasted about 1,000 years and came right after the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century. So don't be surprised if throughout this video we're going to see some examples of things or customs that the Romans did that we still see in the medieval era, except they're a little bit different. They have evolved. In the medieval society, you pretty much only had two classes. You had the peasants and then you had the nobility. The peasants and the nobility, they would pretty much live their lives separately and kind of independently from one another, not really interacting or having fun together. And of course, they kept themselves entertained in different ways, which we're going to see later on in this video. But first, let's take a look at something that was common to both of them: the church. By then, the church had become a very important part in people's lives. I mean, it was the central authority. It pretty much had all of the power in medieval society. And that was because everybody back then believed in God, and they were afraid that if they went against the church, they would go against God and then they would go to hell. And hell was a very real thing in the Middle Ages. And this led to some very interesting ways of life that we can't really relate to. I mean, nowadays the church does not have the power or the influence that it used to. But for these people, the church was everything. The church was life. You would always think about the church. You would always think about God. So it's very interesting to see how entertainment played into all of that. Some of the medieval entertainment was directly related to the church, things like festivals or saint commemorations. It is estimated that about 8 weeks of the year were non-working days dedicated to celebrating something for the church. Some of these festivals include Christmas, a festival called May Day in which the people dress up and go and dance around in poles, saint celebrations, or plays and performances reenacting Bible stories. I mean, for 8 weeks out of the year, that's kind of a lot. People had a lot to do related to the church. But it wasn't all about the church. I mean, not all medieval entertainment was related to the church. In fact, the next thing that we're going to see is something that the church wasn't such a big fan of, and those were jousts and tournaments, in which prisoners or other performers would reenact wars or important events that were going on at the time. They would arm up, get on a horse, and then face their opponent in an arena where spectators could come and watch and enjoy a nice show. And here you can see directly the influence from the Roman Empire, except in the medieval era, these things were much more regulated and death wasn't so common, so I guess they learned their lesson. But now if we look past the church, then that's where we can really start seeing some differences in the way these people kept themselves entertained. So we're gonna look at the nobility versus the peasants, and of course let's start from the bottom and go with the peasants. The peasants were very poor and they had to find very simple and cheap ways to keep themselves entertained. It wasn't really possible for them to spend a lot of money on a hobby or something. Plus, these people were working all day, so when they got home, they would usually be pretty tired. Luckily for them, there were a lot of traveling musicians going around from village to village performing for people, and these performances were usually free, but you could give a donation if you wanted to support the musician. I mean, that's pretty much what they lived on. But if you really had nothing and you just wanted to go see a show, then you could see a local musician and just see him play and enjoy a nice show. That was pretty much free and simple to do. Performers were usually jesters, jugglers, bards, and musicians that would play either in the town square or in the king's court. And sometimes you had a mix of nobility and peasants, but as a peasant, if you wanted to get a more intimate setting, you could very well just go to your local inn, get a nice pint of ale, and enjoy somebody playing the lute or something, for example. Board games like chess and backgammon were also very popular amongst the peasants because they were simple, they were cheap, and they could last for hours. I mean, it was very cheap entertainment. You could just afterward go with a friend, play a nice game of chess, and you would be entertained for at least 2 or 3 hours. Sports were a very popular choice too, even though they required physical activity. After a long days of work, you would want to come home and just play a nice game of something. And some of these sports, they eventually led to the mainstream sports that we now have today. And this again is one historical period influencing and evolving into another. The nobles, on the other hand, well, they were rich. They had a lot more money to spend, so they could get really creative with their hobbies and entertainment. Their favorite thing to do were to host feasts or banquets that could last well into the morning hours of the next day. At these feasts and banquets, there would usually be some sort of performance, whether it be a bard, a musician, a jester, or a juggler. There was always something that was there to entertain the nobles while they were eating. But after the eating was done, the floor was cleared and the nobles they went to dance. Dancing was very popular in the Middle Ages. It was seen as a sign of courtship, which is very surprising coming from the Middle Ages. I mean, that period is known for war, disease, and anything that's really dark. That's why they call it the Dark Ages. So it's really nice and refreshing to see a sign of class and elegance to come out of the Middle Ages. And by the way, knights, they were not only expected to know how to fight in battle, but they were also expected to know how to dance. The nobility also liked to hunt, which shouldn't really be a surprise. I mean, hunting is as old as the human race. They would get a bow, get a bunch of arrows, and go straight into the woods and hunt for their prey. They would sometimes use a dog or a falcon, but the falcon was only reserved for the nobles because it required a lot of investment. I mean, you had to get the falcon from young, you had to train him, you had to raise him, you had to invest in all of the equipment, and only when the falcon was an adult, only then could he hunt with you. And that is something that the nobles really liked to show off, besides their money. I mean, the better your falcon was at hunting something, the better you looked, because it meant that you were a good trainer, which was something that everybody wanted to be. And that kind of covers the general idea of medieval entertainment. Now, of course, I haven't talked about everything, and there are some things that I talked about that I haven't gone through in depth, but that is done on purpose. I actually want you guys to go out and research on your own. I designed these videos to pique your interest in a subject so that you can go out and research on your own and learn more stuff on your own. And of course, after you can come back and you can comment what you've learned, and then we can have a nice discussion. I really want this to be a two-way thing. And now for those who made it to the end, first of all, I want to say thank you. You guys are the guys that I make these videos for. I mean, I make videos so that people watch them till the end. And I just wanted to mention how interesting I find it to learn about different historical eras and see how they each influence one another. I mean, each historical era is influenced by the one that came before it, and you can always trace things back through the historical periods. Things that came from today might end up coming from the Roman Empire or things like that, you know? And I really find that interesting, and that's what Vlogs of Knowledge is all about. It's about me learning about these things and sharing them with you, sharing the knowledge. So with that being said, I really hope that you found this video informative. I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, share it to a friend, and subscribe to this channel for more. My name has been Narius Cousin, and I will see you all next week.